After 30 years of fighting ninjas, robots, mutants, and monsters, the radical reptiles came back one more time to strike hard and fade into the night.
Turtle power!
Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm ERod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. One of the first two franchises that I made a conscious decision to be a fan of when I was a kid. Ninja Turtles was the most successful property of the 90s. But once the decade of Extreme ended, their popularity started to wane, as the franchise started to experience just as many peaks as valleys. And when the 2003 animated series ended with a massive made-for-TV movie that saw the modern Turtles meet their 1980s counterparts, we all thought that the Turtles were done for a while. Little did we know that a mere 3 years later, Viacom, in conjunction with Nickelodeon, would bring back the Turtles in what many consider to be their greatest adaptation to date. This time helmed by Ciro Nieli, who is best known as the creator of Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go, as well as part of the writing team for Teen Titans and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. While Ciro lacked the IMDb credits of the big animators that are generally chosen to take over big franchises like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he made up for that with sheer enthusiasm and love for the franchise. Rumor has it that every time he came in to do an interview for the job, he always brought in a notebook full of sketches demonstrating what he would do if he were put in charge of the show. So yes, for the first time ever, we were going to get a Ninja Turtles show created by a fan for the fans.
The plot.
Seriously? You don't know the backstory to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Alright, for the sake of those of you who should seriously be returning your geek cards, the tale of the Turtles begins in the late 1980s, where a young martial artist named Hamato Yoshi loses his wife and daughter to his rival, Oroku Saki. Distraught and looking for a fresh start, Yoshi moves to America, to the city of New York. One day, after purchasing 4 baby turtles from a pet store, he is attacked by a group of very strange men in an alley, carrying a mysterious glowing ooze. During the skirmish, the ooze is accidentally spilled on Yoshi and the turtles, transforming them and giving them aspects of the last creatures they came into contact with. Yoshi becomes a human-rat hybrid after inadvertently touching some rats in the alley. The turtles take humanoid form, as the last thing that they touched was Yoshi. Now as freaks and outcasts, the 5 of them must hide from humanity within the city's sewer system. There, Yoshi teaches his adopted children ninjutsu, so they can defend and conceal themselves from the world above. Yoshi names them after his favorite artists of the Italian Renaissance, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. And in part, the Turtles give him a new name, Splinter. After the Turtles' 13th birthday, Splinter starts to allow his sons to go to the surface at night to explore the city. There, they discover that the mysterious men who caused their transformation have sinister plans for the city, and eventually, the world. So the boys decide to put their ninja skills to work, putting a stop to their plans. Unfortunately, this gets the attention of Splinter's former rival, Oroku Saki, who is now the leader of the Foot, a ninja crime syndicate, and now calls himself the Shredder. So, with a ninja clan hunting after them, the fate of the world hanging in the balance, and their exposure at risk, they must put Splinter's training to the test as they secretly fight with all their might to save us as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Do you know what it's time for? The world's first ever mid-air high 3! Yeah!
One of my favorite aspects of this series is how Ciro would always make sure to pay tribute to the source material, all the while embracing the new. For example, how he created an entire evil alien race, the KRAANG, solely based on the villain from the 1987 series. And of course, the presence of the KRAANG not only explains the Turtles and Splinter's origin, but it also gives way to most of the Turtles' adventures once they start venturing into the surface. I also think that it was brilliant how the KRAANG created the very thing that ends up defeating them, the Ninja Turtles. Man, was Ultron right.
Everyone creates the thing they dread.
Character design and animation.
This is the first Turtles series to primarily use computer animation, which had its pros and its cons, as the characters would often look very stiff or they would move in a very awkward fashion. However, the one area in which the animation always had the utmost quality was during the fight scenes, which always looked excellent, combining the right amount of humor, action, and dynamic fight choreography. Even though the turtles went into battle in nearly every episode, the sequences never felt repetitive or predictable, and they were always one of the show's highlights. The designs were very hit and miss. The turtles, for example, looked excellent, each design complementing each turtle's distinct personality. Unfortunately, some of the creatures and villains just looked like toys. The most disappointing one of them all was Dog Pound. He looked like a plush doll, not a fierce mutant monster. Like he'd be more at home on a little girl's bed, as opposed to an epic battle on a rooftop in New York. And I think the creators knew this, as they dramatically changed his design in the second season.
Don't ever call me dog.
You got it, Razar!
Cast and characters.
In my humble opinion, this is the greatest cast that Ninja Turtles has ever had. And I mean no disrespect to any of the previous cast members, who were all great. But apparently, I'm not the only one who thinks so, as their unveiling was treated with the same level of prestige as the cast reveal for a major movie or TV franchise, receiving both a panel at Comic-Con and a photo shoot for Entertainment Weekly. Not bad for a silly children's franchise made to sell toys. Personally, I was never surprised by the quality of the cast, as the casting and voice director for this show is the very best, Andrea Romano. Responsible for directing such classics as Batman the Animated Series, Teen Titans, and Voltron Legendary Defender, just to name a few, let's just say the quality was expected. So thank you, Andrea, for yet another extraordinary animated show that we will treasure forever that bears your stamp of awesomeness. Alright, enough stalling. Let's start talking about the characters, starting with
The villains.
Quick disclaimer, this show had lots and lots and lots of villains, so there is no way that I could cover them all in one video. For now, I'm just gonna concentrate on talking about the main ones, starting with
The KRAANG, played by Nolan North.
Now, quick question. Am I the only one that thinks that the KRAANG's cybernetic human bodies all look like comedian Adam Carolla? Now, I don't know about you, but I think Adam should be collecting checks for likeness rights. Anyway, the KRAANG are aliens from another dimension, intent on mutating our world so it will be habitable to them, but inhabitable to us. Unfortunately, the mutagen that they intend to use to terraform our planet doesn't work the same way in our dimension, as it mainly creates anthropomorphic mutations like the Turtles, Splinter, and their enemies. So the KRAANG have spent the last few centuries trying to perfect the mutagen, so it will meet their dimension-conquering needs. As the show progresses, we learn that the KRAANG are actually a renegade faction of the Utrom, a peaceful race initially introduced in the comics as well as the 2003 series. The KRAANG share a hive mind and have no individuality, which makes them easy to predict and defeat, but they are persistent, relentless, and resourceful, so they should never be taken lightly.
Yes! KRAANG Prime returns to Earth!
You got some kind of plan to fight that?
Not really, no.
Now let's move on to the antagonist that always straddled the fence between being good and evil.
Karai, played by Kelly Hu.
This is by far one of the most captivating and best written characters in the series, as Karai's motivations were always divided between revenge, duty, and honor. This was a very emotionally complex performance, and I have to say that Kelly Hu did a magnificent job taking on the challenge. While she is mostly known for being a sex symbol, Kelly proved herself indefinitely as an actor playing Karai, as every season she was required to play her differently, from the villainous vixen, to the divided daughter, to the reluctant ally. Karai always kept you guessing.
Sorry, Leo.
Alright, let's move on to Karai's father and one of the greatest villains of all time.
The Shredder, played by Kevin Michael Richardson.
Here's the thing, while the Shredder might have a very strong fandom, I have always felt that people are more in love with the legend of the Shredder than the character himself. Keep in mind, he is barely in the comics. Hell, he dies in the first issue. The version from the 1987 series was ridiculous. The movie version, while badass, was still terribly one-dimensional. And the 2003 version was an Utrom. My point is that it wasn't until this show actually fleshed out the Shredder's motivations and personality that we officially had a character worth admiring. In this series, we find out that Splinter and Shredder's rivalry went far beyond their martial arts prowess, as they both battled for the affection of a beautiful young woman named Tang Shen, a battle that Splinter seemingly won, since he and Shen were married, and had a baby girl named Miwa. But it was during one of their many tumultuous encounters that Shredder inadvertently killed Shen, something he stubbornly blamed on Splinter, which is a recurring theme with the character, as very much like Demona in Gargoyles, his hatred blinds him beyond reason, and he often takes unnecessary chances for the sake of revenge, as not even the coldest winter can quell his rage.
Fool! Do you have any idea what you've done?
Yes. I took your family away, and now I can put an end to you, once and for all.
Alright, we've talked about the hunter, now let's talk about his prey as we delve into the members of the Hamato clan.
The Heroes.
One of the most brilliant changes that Zero added to the franchise, strangely enough, was how he was the first showrunner to have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles actually act like teenagers. It's strange to think that in 30 years of the franchise, no one thought to do this, and the Turtles pretty much acted like wise-ass cartoon characters, as opposed to the immature adolescents that they were supposed to be. As part of their youthful new portrayal, a lot of their supporting cast was de-aged, like Karai, Casey Jones, RENETT the Time Master, and of course the most famous gal pal in the history of fiction,
April O'Neil, played by Mae Whitman.
This is a character who has gone through a major evolution as the years have passed. Originally, nothing more than a damsel in distress and the Turtles' female counterpart. But as time went by, April became more independent, tougher, and in far less need of rescue. This show chronicles that particular journey rather well, as she is literally kidnapped in her first scene, but soon after she is rescued, she makes a conscious decision to train as a kunoichi, a female ninja. And her journey of self-reliance is not an easy one, as she doesn't just go from feeble teen to a badass ninja from one episode to the other. In fact, it takes her about 3.5 seasons of training before she gets there. So you get to experience every step of her struggle as the series progresses. And when she finally gets there, it's glorious. It was also in this series where it is revealed that April is actually a half-mutant, half-human hybrid, and henceforth possesses telekinetic abilities, which was a very divisive change to some fans. Personally, I liked it. It gave the character more dimension, and it also showed that just because you have superpowers, it doesn't automatically make you a hero. April had to earn that title, and earn it, she did. Now let's talk about the patriarch of this powerful pack.
Splinter, played by Hoon Lee.
Splinter has always been a role that has been strictly reserved for exposition, backstory, and the occasional words of wisdom. But in this series, Splinter was so much more. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, this is the first time that Splinter has ever been portrayed as a father. He loves his kids, and he wants them to succeed, but they still have a lot to learn. So at times, they stubbornly disobey him, which leads to my favorite aspect of this particular version of Splinter. Splinter spanks his kids. Look, a little bit of discipline goes a long way. It's all I'm saying. I have to give all the credit in the world to Hoon Lee, as he has played the absolute best version of Splinter thus far, as this was a very multifaceted role. He was a mentor, a father, husband, hero, and sometimes much welcomed comic relief.
Be warned. It seems this new assassin may be working for the Shredder.
Alright, let's start talking about the boys in green, starting with the turtle that always knows when it's party time.
Michelangelo, played by Greg CIPES.
Ever since I was a kid, Michelangelo was my favorite turtle, so I've always been very particular about the way the character is portrayed. With that said, Greg CIPES' version of Michelangelo is the best one. While actors like Townsend Coleman and Robbie Rist did a fantastic job of capturing the humor and exuberance of the character, it was CIPES who did the best job of portraying the character's youthful immaturity, and most importantly, his naivete. Mikey is the heart of the team, a refreshing burst of honesty, joy, and emotion among his angst-driven brothers. Mikey is impulsive and truthful no matter the situation, which often leads to hilarious misfortune or legitimately touching moments.
That's enough, Raph! Enough! Ah! It's okay, bro. Since he's a master ninja, he's gonna be just fine.
Aww, ninjas that hug. Alright, let's talk about the fellow who has a way with machines.
Donatello, played by Rob Paulsen.
Alright, I know that everyone who has ever talked about this show has pointed this out, but for the sake of the two people who might still not know, yes, Rob Paulsen originally voiced Raphael in the 1987 series. And while he did a fine job in that role, I feel he was far better suited for Donatello, as he is the smart, sensitive member of the team, the conscience of the group. While the character's genius gives way to more sci-fi stories, I've always felt that it was his kind disposition that was the biggest asset to the group, as he is the one who generally prefers to rely on strategy rather than violence. This, of course, gives way to the aspect of the character that fans are most obsessed with, which is Donnie's badass crush on April O'Neil. First of all, I can't help but draw parallels between this relationship and Dipper and Wendy from Gravity Falls, another dude that's into a redhead that's way out of his league. And isn't it insane how both Donnie and Dipper approach their dilemma in the same way, by creating an overly complicated checklist?
Show me that checklist again.
And even though it was highly improbable that Donnie and April were going to have a romantic relationship, I have to admit, the subplot was very entertaining.
So awesome.
I love being a turtle!
And with that, we move on to the turtle that has the most attitude in the team.
Raphael, played by Sean Astin.
Yes, Sean Astin, the star of Goonies,
So much for finding a hidden pirate ship.
and The Lord of the Rings.
I don't do rings.
They reference that
Deja vu!
a lot.
You shall not pass!
For now, let's concentrate on his role in this show. Raphael is the hothead of the group, the warrior. His temper burns almost as intensely as the Shredder's. But unlike the vile villain, Raph actually has a loving family to help him cage the rage. As far as his role in the team, Raph is the mean older brother, constantly abusing his siblings in a misguided attempt to toughen them up. But the most appealing aspect of Raph is that secretly, he is the most sensitive member of the group, even more so than Donatello. And often his fits of rage only emerge to mask his true feelings. Cause at the end of the day, out of the 4 turtles, he is the one who is a true romantic.
Someday, our noses will meet in the flesh.
My nose will be ready.
Alright, let's talk about the leader in blue, who does anything it takes to get his ninjas through.
Leonardo, played by Jason Biggs, Dominic Catrambone, and Seth Green.
Now, why was Leonardo played by 3 different actors? Well, I'll cover that as I make my way through the different seasons. For now, let's just talk about the character. Leonardo, who's mostly known only for being the responsible dull leader of the group, was given a lot more depth here, as we see him develop in his leadership role. As initially, his understanding of having a command position is entirely based on what he's seen on TV. And very much like April's evolution as a kunoichi, we also see Leo develop as a leader, something we never got to see in any previous iterations.
Guys, we're ninjas, remember? We move swiftly and, here's the important part, silently.
Beehive!
Alright, this is where I start talking about the individual seasons. There are plenty of spoilers ahead, so if you've never seen the show, this is a good spot to stop the video. You've been warned.
Season 1.
Like most modern shows, this iteration of Ninja Turtles was very much arc-driven, and for the most part, The story arcs were always pretty solid, drawing from the comics and previous shows, all the while adding some new twists. With that said, the filler episodes for Season 1 were pretty hit and miss, as most of which followed the same formula. Turtle makes a mistake, Turtle learns lesson, Turtle saves the day, the end. Thankfully, this was something that was improved in future seasons. Season 1 was all about choices and consequences, as we see all the consequences that the Turtles must face as they venture out to the surface for the first time, and how their choices, slowly but surely, shape them as characters. One of my favorite examples of their slow development is when the Turtles engage in their first fight scene with the KRAANG, as we clearly see that they have no clue how to fight as a team, which is something that they work on and improve upon as the series progresses. Two major traditions are established during this season. The first is that of Mikey naming all the mutants.
Snakeweed is really powerful!
Snakeweed?
Very much in the same way that Cisco Ramon names all the metahumans in The Flash. And my other favorite tradition in the series is that of the show within the show, as every season the Turtles would become obsessed with a TV series that would hilariously parallel the events of each episode.
Hey guys, ever notice how the cartoons we watch are kinda just like our missions?
In Season 1, the show within the show was Space Heroes, which was a brilliant parody of the Filmation Star Trek animated series. The arc of the inaugural season sees the Turtles take on the KRAANG for the first time, as they do their best to figure out their plan for world domination and how to stop it. This is made far more complicated when Shredder shows up, looking to kill them and Splinter. And if that wasn't vexing enough, Leonardo falls in love with Karai.
I need to talk.
Can it wait till morning?
I met this girl.
Tell me everything.
Well, she's really cool. She's also a martial artist, and, she's in the Foot Clan.
The finale sees the Turtles engage in a full frontal assault to stop the KRAANG from taking over the world, while Splinter takes on the Shredder head-on. This finale was half good, as all the stuff with the Turtles was just okay, while everything to do with Splinter and Shredder was excellent, as their encounter leads to one of the greatest plot twists in the history of the franchise.
I took something from you, your daughter.
Miwa?
This was brilliant, as it explained Splinter's motivations for wanting to confront the Shredder. While the Shredder simply wants revenge, all Splinter wants is his daughter back. A daughter that his enemy raised to hate him. And to be perfectly honest, this is my favorite subplot in the entire series.
Season 2.
The sophomore season was all about making amends, as it literally opens with the Turtles making a huge mistake, as they inadvertently dumped a few dozen canisters of ooze over the city, mutating a few of its citizens, one of them being April's dad, an action that drives a rift between the fiery redhead and the Turtles. And thus the Turtles spend the season trying to make things right and earn April's forgiveness. This theme also applies to the bad guys, as Karai starts to realize that maybe, just maybe, Shredder is lying to her, and begins to regret all the times that she nearly killed the Turtles and her true father, actions for which she too seeks forgiveness. This sadly leads to Shredder incarcerating her and even brutally mutating her into a snake, something he psychotically blames Splinter for.
You, Hamato Yoshi. You take this!
The show within the show this season was Super Robo Mecha Force Team 5. Say that 10 times fast. Which is a very overt parody of Voltron, as well as a brilliant metaphor for coming apart and reassembling, very much like the Turtles in April. The good thing about April being on her own for a bit was that we saw her be fleshed out a lot more, as she gained her own supporting characters, namely her dorky friend Irma, played by Kate Micucci, and Casey Jones, played by Josh Peck. Now I have to admit, I was a bit skeptical when I first heard about this casting, as my only impression of Josh Peck was that of the campy, unfunny Nickelodeon sitcom star. But boy did he quickly put my skepticism to rest, as he was ridiculously good at playing this part, capturing both the bad boy swagger and tough guy tendencies of the hockey mask wearing vigilante. Also, this started somewhat of a love triangle between him, Donnie, and April, but the creators opted to not conclude it in the end, end, leaving its outcome to the fans, which I think was all for the better. Season 2 also began the tradition of the mid-season event, usually marked by a huge 2-part episode that Nickelodeon would promote like it was the second coming of Christ. This year's mid-season event was the Manhattan Project, which I am sorry to say has absolutely nothing to do with the awesome video game from the 90s, but was good nonetheless. Here we see the Turtles try to stop a massive KRAANG plot to bring giant mutagen producing worms under New York, which will bring the city down through a series of earthquakes. At the same time, Shredder brings his vendetta against Splinter and the Turtles to a whole new level by acquiring the service of the deadliest mutant assassin in all of Asia, Tiger Claw, played by Eric Bauza. Now, I cannot emphasize just how good this 2-parter was. Unfortunately, after it aired, there was only one scene that the fans were talking about.
I bet that pesky Shredder and KRAANG are behind this.
You know what that means, right, Leonardo?
We take down the creepy crawler and then we order pizza. Yes! Turtle power! Cowabunga!
Yup, the creators reassembled the classic cast from the 1987 series to do a quick cameo. And after that, the fans wouldn't shut up about when they were going to do a proper crossover between the modern Turtles and the classic ones. But more on that later. Now, while we're on the subject of former cast members, it was at the latter half of Season 2 that Jason Biggs was let go from the series. Now, Nickelodeon or Viacom have not issued an official statement as to why this happened, but most fans believe that it was due to Nickelodeon linking the Ninja Turtles Twitter account to the accounts of all the actors on the show. Soon thereafter, Jason posted a few vulgar jokes at the expense of the Republican political party. And while the jokes were pretty harmless, they contained the kind of language and subject matter that Nickelodeon definitely didn't want linked to Ninja Turtles. So shortly after, an apology was issued. Jason's Twitter was no longer linked to the Ninja Turtles one, and he was discreetly and abruptly replaced with Dominic Catrambone for the remaining 8 episodes of the season. All the while, the creators looked for a permanent replacement. Now, once again, I have no confirmation that this was the actual reason why Jason Biggs was let go from the show, but it certainly seems that way. Now, if any of you have any more details on the matter, I highly encourage you to post them in the comment section below. All I'll say is that Jason was great as Leonardo, and it's a shame that he had to go. And I would also like to give major props to Dominic, who did a fantastic job in spite of being a temporary replacement. In fact, he was so good at impersonating Jason Biggs' voice that most viewers didn't even notice the change. And he delivered some pivotal performances in some very important Leonardo-centric episodes, namely in the Season 2 finale, The Invasion, where we see Shredder team up with the KRAANG to take over the city. And the twist is that they succeed. In spite of the Turtles' best efforts, the KRAANG and Shredder beat them at every turn, conquering the city, disposing of Splinter, and drawing Leonardo into an ambush, where our boy in blue takes one hell of a beating. This moment, of course, is right out of the comics. They also recreated it in the first movie, but with Raphael instead of Leonardo for some reason. So even though the Turtles fight with all their might, and even face off against KRAANG Prime in a badass turtle mech, they are still beaten, and have no choice but to retreat.
Season 3.
We begin our 3rd year with the Turtles, April and Casey retreating to the O'Neill farmhouse to tend to their wounds, regroup, and re-strategize for their eventual return to New York. This was when Seth Green officially took over as the voice of Leonardo, and I have to say, it is a testament as to how animation fans have changed that the creators found it necessary to explain the change in Leo's voice.
So like, why does he sound different? He sustained damage to his throat.
Now, as far as Seth playing Leonardo, while Jason and Dominic were good, Seth Green was just better, capturing both Leo's youthful zeal as well as the brooding weight of his role as a leader. Hell, his first arc right out of the gate was Leo dealing with the trauma of being defeated, which is a huge acting chore, and Seth handled it spectacularly. Also, on a side note, it was Seth Green's wife, Claire Grant, who's a massive Ninja Turtles fan, who famously approached Zero Nieli and suggested Seth should take over as Leonardo. So to be clear, Claire got her husband a role playing one of the most iconic characters in all of fandom. So as far as marriage is concerned, Seth Green wins. So the first quarter of the season is spent in the woods, and I have to say the episodes, once again, were pretty hit and miss. While all of the previous threats that the turtles faced felt pretty organic, their adventures out in the woods felt very forced and a bit contrived. The main theme this season is that of maturity. The turtles are on their own for the first time, so they must mature, and we see them take it upon themselves to complete their ninja training and take back the city. This leads to two major moments of fan service. They build the party wagon, which is awesome, and Anton Zek and Ivan Starenko get mutated into Bebop and Rocksteady, played brilliantly by JB Smoove and Fred Tatasciore. Now personally, I have never been a fan of Bebop and Rocksteady. To me, they were just dumb comic relief sidekicks. But boy did this show change my view of these characters. First, I can't put into words just how much I appreciate the creators establishing everyone as a character before mutating them. Secondly, JB and Fred had excellent chemistry. Bebop and Rocksteady had distinct personalities and fighting styles, unlike their completely interchangeable 1980s counterparts. But more importantly, they were both a legitimate threat, and undisputably hilarious.
Phew! Rhino Leg's very fast! Good workout! Better than the Pilates!
And on the subject of hilarity, the show within the show this season was Krognard the Barbarian, which was a parody of He-Man and Thundar the Barbarian. Like I said, the theme this season was maturity, and Krognard had none.
We the slug people bring you tidings of peace.
Attack!
Another major staple of the franchise introduced this season was RENETT the Time Master, played by Ashley Johnson, who Mikey has a bit of a crush on. And of course they also introduced her arch nemesis, the time-traveling mutant demon Savanti Romero, played by the Saint of Killers himself, Graham McTavish. This of course facilitates the introduction of time travel into the series, but more importantly, led to my second favorite episode of the series, Tale of the Yokai, which sees the turtles travel back in time to Japan in the 1980s and actually bear witness to Splinter and Shredder's origin. The episode is unexpectedly tragic but heartwarming at the same time. Hoon Lee and Kevin Michael Richardson's performances are award-worthy, and the episode is chock full of awesome moments, like the turtles being mistaken for Kappa, which are turtle monsters of Japanese folklore. And my absolute favorite moment is when the turtles meet Tenshin and Leo gets to hold baby Karai. The mid-season event this year was the Battle of New York, in which the turtles and a few of their mutant allies, aka the Mighty Mutanimals, from the Archie comic, team up to banish the KRAANG back to Dimension X and save the city. This is when the KRAANG are officially defeated, and in spite of a few appearances in future episodes, they are no longer a major threat. I thought this was a bold choice, as they were such a major staple throughout the entire first half of the series. Now, while the turtles do manage to stabilize Karai's mutation, so she can change back and forth at will, Shredder still continues to torment them by capturing her and brainwashing her to once again hate them. And right when you think that getting Karai back on their side is going to be the main arc of the end half of the season, the creators threw a major curveball at us, as the Earth is invaded by aliens. More specifically, the Triceratons, an intergalactic dinosaur-like race, who have been a major part of the franchise since the comics. Suffice it to say that Triceratons showing up is a huge deal. And I have to admit, the creators most definitely lived up to the hype, as their attack is so huge that Splinter and the Turtles have no choice but to team up with the Shredder and the Foot. Which is a great idea, on paper. Yes, Shredder actually kills Splinter. But that's not even the most shocking part, because if you thought that last season's cliffhanger with the KRAANG conquering the city was mind-blowing, you've seen nothing yet, as the Triceratons destroy the entire Earth. Now, as far as cliffhangers are concerned, Cyranielli and his writing staff win.
Season 4.
So Earth, along with everyone the Turtles have ever known, is gone. Their only hope is to go back in time and prevent the event before it happens. It sounds like the Turtles need a doctor. Moments before the Earth is destroyed by the black hole generator, the Turtles, April and Casey, are rescued by Professor Zayton Honeycutt, aka the Fugitoid, played by none other than the 10th Doctor himself, David Tennant. The Fugitoid, who's an enemy of the Triceraton Empire, gives the turtles a second chance by taking them back in time 6 months, so they can go on a mission across the galaxy, acquire the pieces of the black hole generator before the Triceratons do, and save the Earth. This is my favorite season. The stakes were never higher, and the turtles' adventures in space were awesome, presenting one unexpected scenario after the other, complemented by a myriad of excellent guest stars like Lance Henriksen, Michael Dorn, Lucy Lawless, Ron Perlman, Keith David, Peter Stormare as classic TMNT villain Lord Dreg, and Zelda Williams as Raphael's love interest, Mona Lisa, the Salamandrian warrior. And the season also includes my favorite show within the show, Chris Bradford and his Too Tough Crew, which is a parody of Chuck Norris and his Karate Commandos. Not only does it spoof the classic cartoon brilliantly, but it gave Clancy Brown a chance to put his comedic talents to use, which is always a treat.
I'm going to kick your communist butt so hard, it'll fly up and land on your head like a giant butt beret.
The season also includes the first official crossover with the classic 1987 series, which saw the return of Cam Clark, Townsend Coleman, and Barry Gordon as the original Turtles, as well as Pat Fraley as KRAANG. Now this episode is excellent. It includes 3 different styles of animation, and is jam-packed with lots and lots of awesome crossover moments. And yet, after it aired, all the fans could talk about was how the episode was so short and how it should have been a 2-parter. More on that later. The mid-season event this year was Earth's Last Stand, which sees the Turtles return to Earth for one last chance to save Splinter and stop the Triceratons from destroying the planet. My only real criticism of this season is that this episode felt a bit rushed, and Leonardo's dispute with the Fugitoid felt completely forced. But other than that, it was a good mid-season event.
Those guys are us?
Now initially, I was very annoyed that the Turtles only spent half the season in space, as apparently the space episodes were ridiculously expensive to produce. But to be perfectly honest, the latter half of this season is excellent. If this season was about anything, it was about graduation. We see the characters finally move forward and reach the next stage of their lives. Splinter finally defeats Shredder. The Turtles complete their ninja training. April becomes a Kunoichi. Casey starts wearing that badass custom-made hockey mask from the comics. And Karai takes over as the leader of the Foot and even acquires a second-in-command, who just so happens to be one of my favorite characters in the entire series, Shinigami, played beautifully by Gwendolyn Yao. Not only did she have excellent chemistry with Karai, but she added a great element of magic and mystery to the series, and she definitely put the love whammy on Mikey. Wait, doesn't Michelangelo already have a crush on Renette? Man, and I thought he was a one-woman turtle. Also, quick note, isn't it just a complete shame that these two never had a scene together? As we head towards the end of the season, Shredder's vendetta intensifies as he doses himself with mutagen and transforms into the hulking and terrifying Super Shredder, purging himself of whatever love and remorse he had left, meaning he is now willing to kill his own daughter to get to Splinter, which makes him more dangerous than ever before. And thus, we arrive at the best finale in the entirety of the series, Requiem and Awari, where we see Shredder go after the Turtles and Splinter at full force, finally succeed in his revenge spree and kill Splinter. Now, a lot of people felt that it was fruitless to spend half the season trying to save Splinter and then just kill him off a couple episodes later. My view on this is that Splinter's death was always supposed to happen, and all the time travel ever did was just delay it, as sometimes tragedy is just inevitable. But I have to say, this is one of the most heart-wrenching sequences I have ever seen. There have only been a handful of moments in the world of animation that legitimately made me cry, and this is one of them. And thus, after a touching funeral scene, our heroes gear up and head out for one final confrontation with their greatest enemy. And to see how far the Turtles have come, and how much more formidable they have become since their first encounter with the Shredder, is simply spectacular, as this is one of the most epic showdowns you will ever see.
Season 5.
This is when the show was rebranded Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is parodied in the show within the show this season, which is Space Heroes: The Next Generation. But a title change and a crappy theme song were not the only alterations to the series, as this season featured less episodes, no story arc, no theme, and mostly multi-part standalone stories, which gave the show a more episodic format, as this season mostly focused on fan service. Instead of telling one big epic story across the season, this chapter focused on telling 7 smaller epic stories, all based off of the same basic premise. Wouldn't it be cool if the Turtles did blank? So with that in mind, I can't think of a reason why I can't talk about all 7 episodes, so buckle up, sit back, and brace yourself, because you're about to get hit by a series of rapid-fire reviews, starting with
the KAVAXAS Quadrilogy.
After the death of the Shredder, Tiger Claw gathers what's left of his master's loyal followers to summon a demon named KAVAXAS, played by Mark Hamill, to resurrect their deceased leader. This astonishing 4-parter was a final curtain call for all of the storylines involving Shredder and the Foot. The episode does a fantastic job of tying up loose plot threads, and in the end, Karai disbands the Foot, promising that she will one day restore honor to the corrupt ninja clan. And Tiger Claw even calls a truce. All of that and lots of awesome Ghostbusters references.
Check it out! I found this at Ray's Occult Bookshop.
When Worlds Collide.
Like the previous story, this too was also a curtain call, but to all of the Turtles' space adventures, as we saw appearances by the Salamandrians, the Neutralizer, Bishop, and Lord Dreg. My one and only negative criticism of this one, and it's a very minor one, is that I felt that this was the perfect opportunity for the Fugitoid to return for a guest spot. And I know that sounds ludicrous, as this episode is jam-packed with guest stars, but to me, no character symbolizes the Turtles' space adventures better than the Fugitoid. So I saw his absence as a huge missed opportunity. But outside of that, this was still one of the biggest and very best episodes of the season, and a good bookend to Raphael's relationship with Mona Lisa, making him the only turtle to have an actual romantic relationship with the girl that he liked.
Aww, that's so cute.
The Usagi Yojimbo Trilogy.
Now, every Ninja Turtles animated series has had a crossover with Stan Sakai's legendary character, but I have to say, this is the best one, as the evil Lord J summons the Turtles to Usagi's dimension, initially to kill the rabbit Ronin, but soon the Turtles and Usagi join forces to save a gifted but annoying kid, and stop Lord J.
Lone Rat and Cubs.
This is the only one-chapter episode this entire season, and it is my favorite episode of the entire show. Written by Ninja Turtles co-creator Kevin Eastman, we finally get to see part of the Turtles' history we've never seen before, which is the days right after the Turtles and Splinter got mutated. Here we find a desperate Splinter trying to protect his new charges from a squadron of KRAANG who are hunting them. Not only is this a fantastic Father's Day episode, but a great swan song for Hoon Lee as Splinter, whose absence after his character's death was deeply felt. Here we see him mostly acting opposite to himself for about 20 minutes, and delivering a performance that in my humble opinion is his absolute best.
Mutants versus Monsters.
It's the Ninja Turtles versus the Universal movie monsters. Do I need to say anything else? Alright, I guess I'll talk about it some more. This, of course, was the final curtain call for the Turtles' time-traveling adventures, as we see the return of RENETT the Time Master, who recruits the Turtles to chase after Savanti Romero through time and space, as he gathers the most feared monsters in history, the Mummy, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, and Dracula, in order to help him conquer the world. I freaking love this episode. It's two of my favorite things combined, and it did not disappoint. Watch it every Halloween.
You guys better blend in too. And look the part as wicked grokkin' monster slayers. Woo!
Awesome! Oh, this is so rad! I feel like Van Helsing, but way cooler than him, actually. Way more rad than Van Helsing.
Alright, let's talk about what was supposed to be the final episode.
Mutant Apocalypse.
Many fans were displeased with this one, and apparently Nickelodeon shared said displeasure, as they did not air this episode last. Basically, the whole thing is an homage to George Miller's Mad Max franchise, as we see the turtles surviving in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And the reason so many people take issue with this episode is because it heavily implies that this sad, depressing setting truly is the turtles' future. Now, to be clear, this episode is really well made. So much so that I am confident that if George Miller were to see it, he would be flattered by the tribute to his creation. But I still feel that it was a bit of a misstep to end the show with a tribute to a whole other franchise, and on such a melancholic down note. And now let's talk about the episode that most fans and Nickelodeon consider to be the last episode.
Wanted. Bebop and Rocksteady.
Nickelodeon loved this episode so much that they released it ahead of time as a DVD exclusive and aired it last, making it appear that it was the series finale, even though technically it wasn't. Also, remember how I said earlier that the fans complained that the crossover with the 1987 Turtles was too short? Well, the creators of this show definitely rectified that, as they delivered a massive 3-part crossover that sees the modern Turtles team up with their classic counterparts one last time to stop the classic Shredder and KRAANG from taking over the world with the help of the modern Bebop and Rocksteady. Now this was a wonderful, beautiful tribute to the entire franchise, and a great swan song for the modern version of everybody's favorite henchman.
True that. Do you want hug?
Yeah, okay. A quick one.
Also, I want to give major props to Kevin Michael Richardson, who played the 1987 version of the Shredder so well that I originally thought that it was Jim Cummings, the actor who originally replaced the late James Avery when he left the show to star in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I freaking love it when voice actors are so good that they fool me, so major props to Kev, the one true Shredder. So yeah, this episode is a magnificent nostalgia trip, so I can fully understand why anyone, myself included, would prefer this as the final episode.
You two don't have to be punching bags.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's your life.
I've always wanted to be a personal injury lawyer.
You see, that's funny because voice actor Barry Gordon really is a lawyer in real life, and you know what? I've been talking for way too long. Let's close this out.
Final verdict.
Thus far, every iteration of Ninja Turtles has brought something significant to the franchise. The 1987 version had an excellent cast, which set a very particular standard for all the actors who would play these characters from that point on. The 2003 version was the first to most faithfully adapt the storylines from the comics, all the while adding their own sense of style and originality. And the 2012 series simply grounded these already extraordinary characters, made them even more relatable, and made us love them even more. Like I said, ninjas that hug. 10 points in the badassitude meter. Grab your favorite ninja weapon, order a pizza, and give it a watch. Until next time, I'm ERod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster. Turtle power.
And you notice where to find it when